A couple pieces of housekeeping. First of all, I want to give a thanks to the people that helped to make today happen. We had a wonderful team. Wait, hold your applause. You don't know who they are yet. But I want to specifically thank our team of organizers, Bill Watkins, all workers, Bill Lancaster, and Zachary Trent. Thank you to these wonderful four gentlemen, and specific thanks. Specific thanks to Bill and Joyce and Ashley and John Costco, who are the main. Is there anyone else that helped with the food?
Joyce and Ashley did it all.
Yeah, so Joyce and Ashley especially, those who provided our wonderful lunch. We want to thank all of these people that helped.
Amazing soup.
What?
They don't hear us because they're back in the kitchen.
They're back in the kitchen, of course.
Okay.
Martha, Martha, Martha.
One other quick piece of housekeeping, totally unrelated, is and thanks to Amber Workers for doing this, spearheading this on behalf of the parish council, but all of the brown chairs in the back are being donated. Amber was able to find it is a church, right? A local church. Okay, in need of,
Okay, the cooks.
Hold on, we're getting distracted. In need of all of these chairs. So all of the brown chairs today, someone is coming at 4:30 after Vespers. Remember, we're having Vespers at the end of the talk. So at 4:30, someone's coming with a big truck to take all the brown chairs away. So those who are able to stay for Vespers until the end, we could use a little help loading up those chairs. Okay, that was the only other piece. Yeah, please.
Are we using some of them for fellowship time?
So what we're going to do is we have even more brown chairs in storage at the Peerless that we're going to bring over next week that are in better condition than these. So we will have more further on, but all of these are going to go. Now,
Father Gregory.
We do want to give special attention, now that they are here and able to hear it, to Joyce and Ashley, as well as Bill and John. Thank you, ladies, very, very much. Okay. And now, without further ado, please, Terry, lead us into our second session.
Okay. The few, the proud, those who stay for part two. Okay, our home is different. This second one, this is the first time I've ever spoken on this topic, so I just have an outline, and I guarantee you we'll have time for questions. Our Christmas is different. Our Christmas is different, and our is both the Orthodox faith and your home. Because trust me, if you think smartphones is tricky territory, try negotiating Christmas, with the rest of a non-Orthodox extended family or something else like that. So anyway, and I'm not talking old calendar versus new calendar. I'm just talking about basically Christmas versus what I call shopping mall Christmas, or the liturgy of the shopping mall. American Christmas. There's an old joke that the two most powerful forces in the American economy, by the way, this is statistically accurate, are Christmas and the Pentagon. And so that tells you something about how big Christmas is in this culture. Christmas versus the Pentagon for number one. Oh, by the way, parentheses. The small towns of North Carolina and parts of East Tennessee, the percentage of their annual take that is linked to Thanksgiving to Christmas is huge. And I would encourage you to find what are the towns in North Carolina that are open and pay them a visit. And I know, for example, that Hot Springs opened, they lost like almost all of downtown, but half of downtown Hot Springs reopened. So and that's just into that parentheses. Just here in our own region, we have the Christmas sales marketing syndrome. Part of our economy is based on it here locally, even more than normal. Okay. Journalists tell stories and then interpret them. It's a little bit like the Talmud. But here's another story from my own personal life. When I was on the faculty, and Deborah was on the faculty too, of Palm Beach Atlantic University, Christmas in South Florida is weird. I mean, basically, big trucks roll into town carrying Minneapolis down the freeway so that it can fill shopping malls to pretend it's somewhere else. And everybody walks around in their flip-flops, British khakis, and floral shirts, and try to pretend it's Christmas. Jingle bells makes no sense coming over the PA of a mall in West Palm Beach, Florida. But anyway, at the school, oh, by the way, there's also something called a Christmas palm. There's actually a Christmas palm that sprouts red berries right about Christmas. And nobody in Florida uses Christmas palms anymore. They use dead trees hauled down from Minneapolis or North Carolina or whatever. And all of the traditional art forms of Florida tropical Christmas. More of the planet observes Christmas in summer or in tropics than in Europe, but we control the advertising, right? And Christmas palms, nobody uses them anymore. They also make these incredible door decorations made out of seashells in the shape of a star with palm fronds like shooting out of the star. Nobody makes those anymore either because it's real. It's Florida. And when the Catholic Church gave up doing La Posadas during the 12 days of Christmas, I knew that was another sign of the end times. So anyway, back to the calendar. At Palm Beach Atlantic University, there was an annual Christmas dinner for the faculty. And in the years we were there, it kept creeping forward in the calendar. And the last year we were there, I think it was like on the last day of November or something like that, was the Christmas dinner for the faculty. And I wrote the president of the school and said, now, sir, I can't help but notice that for the spring semester, we have a mandatory faculty event that happens to fall on the 10th day of Christmas. It's still during the 12 days of Christmas. Why don't we have the Christmas party during Christmas? And I remember him very seriously said, Terry, I know your Orthodox faith is very important to you, and I know that Orthodox traditions are really important to you, but I don't think we can expect a evangelical school to follow. Or I went, I'm not talking about Orthodox Christmas. I said, I'm talking about Charles Dickens, for Pete's sake. I'm talking about Christmas. And he didn't return that email. It would have been symbolic if the faculty had done Christmas during Christmas. I think that would have been interesting. We all had to be there for the meeting. Why not have a dinner that night and then we could sing Christmas carols and it would be Christmas instead of like 3 days after Thanksgiving or something like that. So when is Christmas? Which is also similar to what is Christmas. A decade ago, I asked the ultimate authority on this, which of course is Siri. On my phone, and I said, Siri, when is Christmas? Beep beep. And Christmas is on Tuesday, December 25, 2012. I hope I have the day off. So then I asked Siri, when is Advent? Well, the little circle spun for a lot longer on this one. I didn't find any events about Ed Font. Trying again. When is the Advent season? Siri cheerfully responded, I am not aware of any events about Advent season. I then asked, when is the Christmas season? Siri responded that she didn't understand the term Christmas season. I asked when the 12 days of Christmas are this year. I asked, and Siri now knows when the 12 days of Christmas is. Still doesn't know anything about Advent or anything. And boy, if I'd asked about Nativity Lent, that would have really sent him. But my point is, Christmas is about a war between calendars. And I'm not talking old calendar and new calendar in Orthodoxy. I'm talking about the overwhelming calendar of the culture versus our humble attempts to interrupt it in some way. I also know from personal experience, this is really tough sledding for converts with extended families that are Protestant or whatever. And sensitivity is called for. But our home is different. What I'm going to try to talk about here is how in the world do we make a statement that what Orthodoxy teaches about the little Lent of nativity preparations, how do we make a statement about this and attempt to somehow live out parts of it while still having fun and not turning into the Orthodox Grinches? Without turning our church into something that is the unsmiling, stern opponent of everything else that's going on in the culture. Folks, it ain't easy. But I have some suggestions, just from me, not cleared with the bishop or anybody else. I have some suggestions. I want to start with this question, because you see it every year online. It's a big deal on Twitter. When do you start playing Christmas music? Well, also, what is Christmas music? That's a whole other issue. But when do you start playing Christmas music? Now, I'm going to ask y'all, what have y'all heard or seen online when people answer that question? When do you start?
The day after Thanksgiving.
I'm sorry, what?
The day after Thanksgiving.
The day after Thanksgiving? That's so 1950s.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in just a minute. That is just so old school.
K-Pig followed it.
I hear it right after Halloween.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I saw the first Christmas-specific ads this year in late October. The first time an ad went up about the holiday spirit and giving and shopping, late October. I watch for it every year and mark it like the Grim Reaper, of Christmas ads. When do you start? Okay. I was going to write a column this coming week about an evangelical thinker who's trying to put out an Advent playlist for people to use. And because of things that are happening in Deborah and I's life and heading to Nashville to see family and some medical issues related to that and whatever, I think I'm going to write a different column and save that. What is Advent music? I'm going to save that for next year. I'm going to put that in my calendar for a column, probably in late November next year when people are having when do you start playing? So if you were going to tell me, what do you think is the perfect symbolic Western Advent hymn? Now, it happens to be based on a melody that comes from before the schism. So in a way, we can claim this one as well. But what's the hymn?
Veni Emmanuel.
O come, Emmanuel. I think that's it. So a couple of years ago, and by the way, I'd be glad to provide copies of this. If you'd like it, I can print out the playlist. I created Terry Mattingly's Advent CD. And there's 3 or 4 different versions of O come, Emmanuel on it. Instrumental, piano, guitar, jazz, and a bunch of other stuff. There's a lot of Canadian singer-songwriter named Lorena McKennett did an entire album of traditional music and has a lot of Advent music on it. A lot of the music involves Mary, for example, and perhaps so maybe the Protestants, I can't wait to hear what this evangelical did with Mary in his Advent list. But I have a 120-minute version, and then I have another playlist that's almost 3 hours long. And for me, when I start queuing that up, okay, Mattingly, what are you trying to do? Is this better than listening to Christmas music? Well, first of all, it's not pop stuff. It's all, it's different ways of doing religious music, but it definitely has a different tone than Jingle Bells, or, I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus. It has a different touch than a lot of the kind of the cultural Christmas music. And I have to admit, I don't feel morally superior when I listen to it. First of all, I like it. Second, I notice what the themes are. And it's a way of I listen to music a lot while I edit, when I'm editing things I've written. It's a way of just helping turn the mind a bit. And I'd be glad to provide a copy of mine. It's all available through one form or another. By the way, I'm so old that I buy music. Can you imagine that? I have this belief of mine that if you want people to keep making music, you should pay them for it. Like, it might help them it might make more music in the future. That works with art and stuff as well, or something? Okay. Now here's another image, another issue. When do you start decorating for Christmas? Now I've really gone to meddling, right?
It's a gradual process.
Gradual process. Okay, I'm going to use these terms. There's decorating, and then there's special decorating. And I'm going to urge you to, in your family, to find out what the children will be able to remember. The grandchildren, your children, and then your grandchildren, will they be able to remember, this is what we do at Christmas, and here's why. Now, we don't follow this as strictly as we did years ago when our kids were young. We used to decorate the tree in purple and white. And we have a collection of ornaments that are Old Testament themes and that are like star themes, as in the heading toward Bethlehem. And we would put that on the tree. And we would explain to the children why we were doing that. Then, before we were Orthodox, we would come home from the service of the last Sunday of Advent and decorate the rest of the tree. Now we are into symbolic decorating for Christmas. Now, with our grandchildren, this has ended up working to some degree, because they don't roll, the tornado of the 5 of them doesn't roll in from Kansas until like 2 nights before Christmas, or even 1 night before Christmas. We save the tree for the grandkids. And out come the decorations. And the stories of where the decorations came from, and this is from this friend. That's a gift from your great-grandmother who you never got to meet. The stories of your family come out. And I think that is a part of you forming the story of your home and being able to pass it down. Does that make any sense? And then obviously, certain Orthodox icons and other things have come on as a part of the story. But it didn't cancel out the earlier story. It still fits. My father, I think I mentioned him, was a Southern Baptist pastor. And Christmas was a big deal in our family because it was one of the only times my father had a day off. Was the whole idea. So Christmas was the family reunion time in my family when I was growing up. I know in other families it's Thanksgiving as much as anything. But in my family, Christmas was a huge, huge family reunion deal in East Texas. Does that go away? Hold that thought, we'll come back to it. Now, we just had St. Nicholas. I think Orthodoxy, first of all, should proclaim St. Nicholas as the patron saint of the pro-life movement. And I think we should do St. Nicholas Day as an emphasis Yes, the children put their shoes out, if you know that tradition. Our kids were really tricky. They would put their shoes inside a laundry basket, which gave more room for fruit and chocolate coins and whatever else. They tricky little folks. But I noticed last night our dear friend Jim Tilson, who some of you may know, Tilson's, he had a picture of St. Nicholas, and both of his kids put boots, big tall boots to fill up. But I think we could also make an emphasis on the Sunday closest to Feast of St. Nicholas, and we could ask people that day to bring diapers and some other things that would be needed for crisis pregnancy centers. We are dealing with the patron saint of the orphans and of needy children and even of young women who don't have dowries, and I think it would just be an interesting, so one of my dreams for whatever time God gives me is I would love to see Orthodoxy actually claim St. Nicholas as a day of emphasis for the pro-life movement. Just me. But to me, it would also be a way of saying, yes, you're getting your little chocolate gold coins and all this, and we're also going to put together some oranges and tangerines, and we're donating them to the local food shelter. By the way, they do it because of Thanksgiving. I don't know if this parish has any relationship to a local food bank or something, but Second Harvest is a fantastic organization. And in the days right after Thanksgiving, they have corporate donors who will double every gift. So I was thinking that as a part of St. Nicholas, because of the timing, we might be able to do something there in terms of helping the food bank. Just me thinking out loud. And if the parish has a connection to, let's say I looked up one of them, Agape Women's Services. There are several pro-life crisis pregnancy centers. I'm sure they would love a minivan or two full of diapers and hand-me-down blankets and sweaters and other stuff that we could put together. So, and you get to teach that to your children. And is there a Santa Claus? That's a big question, but is there a St. Nicholas? And the answer is yes, there is. Let's sing his hymn, and venerate an icon of St. Nicholas. And this is why we remember him beyond slapping somebody. For those of you who are listening to the sermon on Sunday. Yes, there is a St. Nicholas. What do you do with the basic materialism of the season? One of the most poignant stories I've ever heard of battles of parenting from a mutual friend of Frederica and I won't get into the name at this point. But let's say that he had a mother-in-law who was out of control. And they were making an effort to kind of control Christmas a bit for their kids. They're not doing away with it. They're going to do presents and whatever, but we're going to try to just hold it down a bit. And one Christmas, the mother-in-law not only rejected that, they woke up on Christmas morning and she had filled their porch with presents, blockaded the door. They couldn't get out the door of their house. I would say at that point the children were excited for a reason that was poignant or even painful for the parents. What can you do? Okay. Is it shopping mall versus Amazon? Is that the only? I actually think you can shop online quieter and in ways that maybe are slightly less disturbing than the old-fashioned way of going out with the Marine Corps and fighting for spots on Black Friday. I almost said Good Friday. Black Friday. By the way, if you didn't know, Black Friday has an interesting history that tells us a lot about Americans. Let's see, do I actually have that in the outline in a different place? Black Friday grew out of the tradition of large department stores sponsoring Christmas parades. And the U.S. Congress moved Thanksgiving to create the formal start of the shopping season. And the Friday after that thus becomes Black Friday that we all know today. But Black Friday has now been deconstructed completely by online shopping. And this is a case where I'm not celebrating that, but I'm not exactly mourning it either. I'll admit we do most of our shopping online, and which helps it kind of arrive and it goes away and then it comes out, at Christmas. We have tried in the past, and I know some other people who do a lot with homemade Christmas, and they want each child to receive and or give at least one gift made in the home. I think we have more ornaments and things that fall into that kind of a category than other things. Just ideas for yourself. But I do think it's a positive good for your children to see you arguing with the Christmas ads, with the advertisements. I mean, that if you can establish that this wave of advertising is not defining what Christmas is for us, I think your children hearing you articulate that might be not quite the equivalent of slapping somebody, slapping the culture, but still, we can at least argue with the culture on this. Parties, parties, parties. Parents, when do the Christmas parties start in East Tennessee?
First weekend of December.
What?
First weekend of December. Yeah.
First weekend of December? Is it schools or what is it?
I mean, Johnson City Christmas Parade, first weekend of December.
Today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then probably first Friday. Yeah.
Okay. This is where we don't want to turn into the Grinches that stole holiday spirit. I believe you shouldn't you're not going to pull your kids out of the parties. But I think at some point you're going to have to let your kids know this is how other people celebrate Christmas and our home is different. And that's where I really would like, hint, hint, the Mattingleys. Now, we've just moved into a house in a flood zone. We're not quite where we normally would be at this point. We don't have our bookshelves up yet. We're still struggling to get our act together. But traditionally, the Mattingleys have always thrown a party during the 12 days of Christmas. And if someone in the parish wanted to throw a 12th night party or something like that, I think even telling your children that for centuries, even in the West, this was the biggest party in Christendom. This, and it's not that you're going to get gifts every day. We're not turning it into some version of Hanukkah or something, but this is when we celebrate the nativity of the Lord Jesus Christ. Not November 30, December 9th, 10th. And I know it's hard, and I don't know how to do it. Do you hear me saying that? I don't know how to pull off the part about taking part in the parties and acknowledging that all of this is going on while still managing to do what we tried to tell our children is, we're waiting for Christmas. And fun will be had. Traditions will be observed. And we did our best. I'm going to give you some ideas for that in a second. What do your children eat at the parties? This might be a good chance to teach. This is my one quote from Father Gordon Walker tonight. That the whole thing that if you go to someone's house at a Christmas party and they serve hamburgers, he would say, eat the hamburger. Offending the host is worse than breaking the fast for a night. But if they've laid out a spate of food that's kind of creatively and you can work your way around it, do it, but don't blow your horn. Like, I just feel like eating salad tonight, or thank you for this lovely cake. But you could tell your children, we are going to go ahead and enjoy being with other people. And we know they have different traditions than we do. And here's that thought again, we're going to do our best. We're going to find a way to symbolize the season. teach the concept of hospitality. Then, when you throw your party during the 12 days, believe it or not, most people's calendars are pretty empty. Somebody, I'm trying to remember what writer said, American Christmas is a stampede to December the 25th, when we make our living room look like a shopping mall exploded. We then clean that up, collapse, and go straight to the NFL playoffs. You know, that's the actual calendar for American culture. Well, some people travel a lot during that time, so you may miss some people. But I'll bet you that if you have some Christmas parties during the 12 days of Christmas, you'll be able eventually to pull some off. You'll be able to get some people together. I jokingly say that one of my goals in life is to be arrested for caroling in a shopping mall during the 12 days of Christmas. You know, I think that would be seen as a form of civil disobedience. And I would be willing to be taken to jail for singing Christmas carols in a mall on like the 10th night of Christmas or something. I'm sure all the decorations will be down and long gone by then, but it could be a symbolic form of protest and funny at the same time. Travel, travel, travel. As I mentioned, we're the only Orthodox in either extended family until our second generation has come along. Christmas involved a tremendous amount of travel in the Mattingly family. Because I told you, it's the only time my dad had off. We went to a big family reunion up in East Texas. And what do? Honor your families. Go ahead and honor your extended families. So our children grew up with the fact that we were going to be in Houston, Texas at Christmas. And our Christmas church was the following, where Father Joseph Honeycutt is now. And we always went to the same church. My parents knew we're going to vanish. You know, it's going to be a long service. We'll see you in the morning. But our kids used to joke about the Christmas church. It was the best we could do. But they got to know people, and when we walked in the door, they knew who we were. It's Christmas again. The Mattingleys are here from East Tennessee. And our children accepted it as saying, we're Orthodox, we're in Houston, deal with it. We're going to their feast. You know, we're going to take food to their feast. We're going to get home at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, or later, or whenever it is. But we're also honoring your grandparents. And we're here for the family reunion because that's very important to them. Work your travel around the celebration at your own parish if you can possibly pull it off. And in many, many cases, you'll be able to. And if you can't, claim a Christmas church and teach your kids that's why you're there. Okay? I have found that it helped our kids understand that we were doing our best. This was what being Orthodox meant for us at Christmas. It wasn't ideal, but it's what we could do. And yes, your grandparents love you. And we're here at their house, you know, we're doing what we can. Now, what do you do with Christmas media? Okay. I have no terrible strong opinion on whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie. I do not, in fact, know what a Christmas movie is. I do not, for the life of me, understand why network executives think The Sound of Music and the Ten Commandments are Christmas movies. No, but God is in them somewhere, so it must be. And it's better than Die Hard, or Die Hard 3, or which doesn't stand for the Trinity, or whatever. I mean, I was introduced by my son-in-law, Jeremy Wagner, who teaches at the Orthodox Classical School in Wichita, Kansas, the great city of Wichita, Kansas. Great place for the Orthodox to hang out. World's greatest religious bookstore. Be careful with your credit cards when you go through the door of Eighth Day Books. The Wagner family, and his father was a Protestant pastor. He was run out of a mainline Protestant church for excessive belief, and is now an alternative Anglican priest with a bishop in Africa. But in his family, a Muppet Christmas Carol was a huge deal. And it was like watched on Christmas Eve. It was put off until the very end, and you always watched a Muppet Christmas Carol. And one of the things that he grew up was them noting that the actual religious language from Dickens' narrator, and I wrote a column about this last year interviewing a Dickens scholar, there is more of the religious message of A Christmas Carol in the Muppet movie than in almost all the other film versions of A Christmas Carol. Scrooge was an old sinner who couldn't believe, like, it's in there. They got the Dickens, and it's coming out of the mouth of a puppet, with Michael Caine wandering through the whole thing, dead serious, as he should be. But first of all, it's a great flick. I wondered what would happen if you had a tradition of showing a Muppet Christmas Carol and then reading the relevant sections of the actual story, A Christmas Carol, and pointing out what this has to do with Christmas. And you can also, while you're there, note that there's a 12th night party in it, and note that there are other parts of the extended Christmas in it as well. It is the traditional Western Christmas calendar in a Muppet movie. Fun thing to notice. And the Wagners of Wichita, they do this every year. And I think last year, didn't we watch it twice? They watched it there once, and we showed it again in Oak Ridge. I don't know if there are any other actual Christmas movies that you particularly cherish, but I'll give you another one that I happen to like. And that is the classic movie from the 30s called The Bishop's Wife, with Cary Grant as an angel who comes down, and there's a priest who's trying to build a cathedral, and he's doing it for all of the wrong reasons. And he's ruining Christmas for his wife and children. But one of the things that's interesting among the religious messages of the film, and there are some, kind of watered down mainline Protestant Christmas, but they're still there. Once again, the actual Christmas calendar is in the flick. Shopping mall Christmas did not arrive in America until the 50s. The old way of doing Christmas stayed alive for decades in the United States, and it kind of died off post-World War II. Maybe that had something to do with television. Maybe that had to do with the creation of national-level advertising campaigns through television, although that started on radio as well. I would urge you, as silly as it sounds, find a couple of worthy Christmas movies and make them part of your family tradition. Have fun with them and talk about them. Why do we watch this thing? Well, eventually your children will think it's cool and even funny that you're watching it again. Watching our grandkids recite key moments of the Muppet Christmas movie or sing along with the songs or whatever is kind of funny, but at the same time, it's a part of what they do at Christmas. And they do everything possible that's at the church. And they'll be here this year, and that means, yes, this is their Christmas church. They come to our house for Orthodox Christmas, and then they go to the in-laws, because that's a much more flexible situation with when Christmas is and what it is and whatever else. So you'll see the Wagners troop in at Christmas this year. They're on the road, and they're doing the best they can. And you'll see them at Christmas. Let me conclude and then go to Q&A and some discussion, and I'm going to sit down. My arthritis has kicked in. A few radical suggestions from me. If you decorate late or semi-late, and Jocelyn's idea of different decorations at different times, and it's a process, thoroughly endorse that. I think you can make that work, and your children will know why you're doing it. But you explain and teach to the children what you're doing when and what it means. And that what it means can also mean what it means within your family. Why this is so important, why that decoration is so important. That was a gift from your teach your family's Christmas story and teach the church's Christmas story. Make a big deal of including some special Christmas decorations into the festive mix. Find some things that are explicitly Orthodox, icons and other things that can fit into the pattern of your Christmas. And then you get to teach why they're there. St. Nicholas is just the front door on that process. Once again, let me repeat, hold a family party or a parish party or a neighborhood party or whatever during the actual season of Christmas. Now, I understand that for the Orthodox, the 12 days of Christmas thing is not liturgically accurate. But it's semi-embraced. And certainly what is embraced is Christmas, the Nativity of our Lord Jesus Christ is the 25th, and we're going to celebrate. And the hymns aren't going to... In Protestant churches, the Christmas hymns are gone, like the day after. The decorations come down, the hymns go away. Whatever you want to say about the 12 days, it is perfectly meet and right and well to teach people that we're going to celebrate Christmas now with your kids. This is the season. 12th night parties, I think it would be wonderful if we could make a comeback for 12th night parties. And after the 12th night party, your decorations then begin to come down, and Christmas is over, and you're packing it up, and you're moving into the rest of the calendar. Christmas is the biggest party of the year. Keep it. I said earlier, I'll ask this as an honest question. When Orthodox Christians carol, what do they sing? Do you go all Western, or do you put some other music in? I'm asking. The Romanians have got great Christmas carols. If we could manage to teach 2 or 3 Christmas carols. They got cold weather, they got cold sanctuaries, they got candles, and they got hymns. The Romanians get Christmas.
And the Ukrainians.
The Ukrainians as well, okay. Maybe we have a party to learn 2 or 3 of these things. Now, they're obviously not for the liturgy, but that doesn't mean they can't be sung afterwards or something. I love the fact that at St. Anne's in Oak Ridge, they set up a different time to go ahead and sing the worthy Western Christmas music. And they have children play violin and play pianos, and they have like a celebration of people playing the music in different ways. The guitars come out, Jim Tilson and I would sing, and whatever else. I think that's a good idea linked to a party that shows we're a part of this culture, as well as the fact that we're embracing the Greeks and the Romanians and the Russians and the Middle East and everybody else. So I think it's a great time to teach the wideness of the Orthodox cultures that we're trying to symbolically embrace and put together in whatever miracle God has for an emerging Orthodoxy. Before I was Orthodox, in the 80s, I ended up interviewing the late Archbishop Iakovos of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, probably one of the most powerful Orthodox prelates in American life of the last 50 years. And I didn't know at the time I would become a part of this, but I asked him about the Evangelical Orthodox and the Antiochians accepting them in. And I said, what do you think an American Orthodoxy would look like? And Archbishop Iakovos, his answer was interesting. He said, I know it's coming, and I have no idea what it will look like. And I thought that was a candid moment. I know it's coming, and I have no idea. Second quote from the late Father Gordon. Father Gordon said, "We will find out what parts of our other Orthodox traditions will be embraced in America, and if anything here that is worthy of the Church, it will enter into the mix as well. But the Church will decide that. And Orthodoxy doesn't do anything fast." However, I'll end with this thought. Children are ticking clocks that you cannot reset. On both of the issues that we're dealing with today, the clocks are ticking. And we don't have any choice but making some decisions to the best of our ability, and in the midst of the struggle, teaching the faith as best we can. Our home is different. Our Christmas is different. Neither of those is easy, but the issues are not going to go away. So I'm now going to sit down and questions. I'd love to hear your questions. And speak very loudly. This room swallows voices.
So, to the point on kind of the discrepancies in the Christmas season when we start celebrating and how we celebrate within our culture, within our workplace, within our schools, etc. How can we navigate participating in those things, like you talked about the mandatory retreat being a really weird time, and there are all these different Christmas parties and things that are right in the middle of the fast.
Right.
It's obviously a difficult issue, but several folks. But how do you navigate that well?
Imperfectly. Imperfectly. But like I said, there are parties, and first of all, eventually there will be people who know you're Orthodox. And if they're friends who love you and you love them, don't be at all surprised if they give you some options. And I found that started happening within a couple of years. And if that happens, thank them joyfully and take that opportunity. I've always wondered, the whole idea of it's 85 degrees and you're leaving the Christmas dinner in West Palm Beach and everybody's slapping you on the back saying, "Merry Christmas!" And it's December the 2nd, or something like that. I decided I would take a stand and I would just say, have a blessed Advent season and a Merry Christmas when it's time for Christmas. Or I would try to say something and they'd usually laugh or something. Well, there goes Mattingly or whatever. But I could not did not have the ability to just shout Merry Christmas right back. So I just would have to ask them to have a blessed Advent and a best Christmas to your family or something like that. A glorious Christmas to your family. Eventually, you will get to have some conversations. And I can't stress too much, our goal is not to be the Orthodox Grinch. And that's why I think it's so important that we find a couple of traditions. The Holy Cross tofu pie that my wife is handing out. Bless his heart, my son's birthday is always during Great Lent. I think we've had 1 year where it was not during. So celebrating a birthday during Great Lent. And Fry went right along, and that's why Fry, for his birthday, wants the tofu pie. And it's going to be decorated up for his birthday, but he'll hit me with the dark chocolate Lenten pie. I'm fine with that. And it's become a joking part of his identity. I'm the guy who doesn't get to have a birthday cake because it's in Great Lent. I'll take the tofu pie and I'll be happy about it. But this whole idea of doing the best you can and doing it with a smile on your face is really important. I mean, there's a lot of stories about fasting in ways that don't proclaim to the world you're fasting, and standing on the corner and going, I think there's a lot of biblical material on that. Don't stand on the corner, woe is me. This is not the point. That's why I'm not joking when I say find the media elements for your Christmas that are fun and that you can celebrate. And invite your neighbor's kids to the Muppet Christmas Carol showing in your home theater. Break out the party, and if they say, Christmas was 5 days ago, and you go, no, have you ever heard of the 12 days of Christmas? And on the first day of Christmas, oh yeah, we know that. I thought that was the 12 days before Christmas, which is when NBC for a while thought it was. They did the 12 days of Christmas with the 12 days leading up to Christmas, and then they moved them back 2 weeks from that. The 12 days of Christmas starting on December the 7th, because everybody was already tired of Christmas by the 21st, or whatever. But what a world. Have fun with it, as well as helping your children know why you're doing it. Does that make any sense? It ain't easy. I know that. You're up against something the level of the Pentagon, as I said earlier. But find what works for you and try it. Other questions? We have a child standing up, but I don't think he has a question. There he went. Periscope down. Now, I heard people were writing questions down and talking about them at lunch.
I want to go back to the morning until...
Okay, fine.
Other questions?
No, we'll just handle them both together.
Okay. Do you want to go?
Of course.
Well, I was talking with Father Stephen about some of this, but the research that's out there is mostly phone use and social media. So what are your thoughts on cell phone use just with texting? I mean, they're still on their phones a lot, but just kind of thinking about maybe it's not as bad, or do we know, or...
In other words, by accepting a dumb phone,
Yeah.
are you just teaching them all the fun things they could do on a dumb phone?
Yeah.
It's not going to be 10 to 12 hours a day connected to the internet.
Sure.
And the folks that are studying this, and the books, The Anxious Generation has come out. There's an excellent there's an excellent smartphone and technology chapter in Tim Carney's book, Family Unfriendly, which is a look at American culture and why it's made family life so much harder. That's another good book that links to a lot of these topics. You can't talk about any of these serious topics without getting to smartphones and out getting to the social media culture. It comes up in Brad Wilcox's great book called Get Married, which is a case for getting married, of all things, if you can imagine that in this culture. And why the marriage crisis is in many ways the most longest lasting crisis of this culture.
The internet lets in lots of evil. I mean, evil is out there everywhere. And if they can get the internet, but if they're just texting their friends, now their friends may want to try to send them something that they can't get to. And the predators are out there more Instagram and Facebook and the internet than just texting your friends and your parents.
There's no question which is the more dangerous. The issue is, have you just created like a milder crutch? Is that what you're really asking?
Maybe.
I still think, trust me, if your children are 15 years old and they have a dumb phone. The other day, for the first time, I think it was during a National Football League game. Those are not cheap ads. I saw an ad from a dumb phone company. And it was all teenagers talking about how liberated they feel, that they don't have that smartphone. And Jonathan Haidt has all the information on this. The teenagers know what it's doing to them. And they wish they could unplug, but they're terrified to think of the social ostracism. Well, if your children are going to face social ostracism over things in this life, whether it's early drinking, whether it's sexuality, whatever it is, our home is different, is going to bring you into conflict with it. And it will eventually probably lead to, yes, dear, I know you're hurting. This is a question to discuss with your priest. This conversation now needs to go to confession with your spiritual father. And this is centuries and centuries of struggle. You're not alone. Ours just look different.
Along those lines, we can only do so much, and I think about friends at school who say, look at this, like they have access to all the things. And even my kids who don't have phones, but some of their friends have phones, and so they're looking out onto theirs, and you can't prevent all.
No, you can't. You may even, at some point, if there are rich enough kids, I wouldn't be surprised if some point to rebel against you, your kid may have a child give them a smartphone. I know that happened a lot with video games and stuff in earlier generations. Happened in our family. It ain't going away. But you're going to try. And I personally think that here's why you have this phone. We need it for safety. It's not an entertainment tool. Our family, our home is different. And you're going to have to make that case at some point. I think you start making it early and often with things that are built into childhood and the rituals they see in your home.
Our kids love music, listening to music, especially the new poppy stuff that's on, and the words are not great. And even getting the edited version, I have it to where on their computers they can't even download or see the explicit versions of songs, but then it's on YouTube or it's on, it's just so hard, and they're going to hear it again. They're going to hear it at school. They're going to hear it on the radio if you choose to let that happen. Music is so hard because I know growing up, I was listening to rock music that was not great. My dad, we had AC/DC on all the time and all this stuff, but I never for once, maybe I was just able to separate it in my head. Like I didn't take in a lot of messages in the music. So I'm like, what are these kids? Are they taking it in? Are they not? Because I know you said everything matters. So there are times that I really care, and there's other times that
our son could care less about music, other than classical and other than singing at church. That's just him. My daughter loved music, and she knew that I am an absolute music fanatic. I can tell you the music that goes with almost every single moment of my life. So my way of attacking it was that I thought the Spice Girls were horrible. I thought they were stupid and that the music didn't make any sense. So listen to this Beach Boy record. She got Pet Sounds, instead of the Spice. And yes, it's old, but my daughter heard me say earlier, can you imagine listening to this music when you're 50 years old? And she'd go, no, this stuff is stupid. And I went, okay, well, I'm 40-something right now, and I'm listening to this, and I still think this band is great. So I tried to teach her that music was so important that it was worth choosing great stuff that you're going to keep forever. And I must admit that being a journalist who was interviewing people and stuff, I totally hooked my daughter on Celtic music. And this day, she loves Celtic music. And her patron saint is St. Hilda. No, St. Hilda is St. Brigid of Ireland is Sarah's, and St. Brendan of Ireland is mine. And of course, 4 to 5-year-old boy wants St. George, the dragon, and the sword. Little boys are going to do what little boys do, right? But she got into Celtic music and movie soundtracks. Our house always, I think, learned to play large brass because they needed it in the high school marching band, and that dang Lord of the Rings soundtrack sounded great. I mean, and so to some degree, I was trying to teach, this is the stuff you're going to grow up with. And frankly, most of the stuff that's on the radio, nobody's going to be listening to it in 7 years. In fact, I will say this, I get back to Father. It's funny, when we moved back to the Tri-Cities, a big funny moment was I called my daughter up, and as we took the turn in South Johnson City on the road to Elizabethton, in our family, that is the Harry Potter exit. Why is it the Harry Potter exit? Because my daughter said, that was the only time in my childhood my father turned out to be totally wrong about something major in popular culture. Because I thought Harry Potter was going to end up going fiercely anti-Christian. Now it is liberal Anglicanism, but J.K. Rowling is a very interesting and complex lady who lives with death threats every day for a lot of reasons. But those books are saturated with Christian symbolism. And so our family, once I had discovered where she was coming from in those books, we embraced it. And our family read the books together. We got hilarious stories to go along with that. A broken down car in Asheville, and we're all sitting in the mall reading the 5th book of Harry Potter, and people are walking by in the mall going, what in the world are these crazy people doing? Sitting in the middle of the mall reading out loud, reading Harry Potter. The first time you ask your children, what is the name of Harry Potter's owl? Okay, who knows, folks? Hegwood. Now here's my next question. Who is Saint Hegwood?
There is a saint.
There is a Saint Hegwood, British and Celtic saint. Would it surprise you that Saint Hegwood is the saint of abandoned children and orphans? And that the owl watching over Harry Potter and giving up his life in the final book to save him. I hope that didn't blow any. But spoilers. Almost every single name in Harry Potter has some religious significance, chosen from her studies in medieval folklore Catholicism. And she was an ancient languages major at London, the University of London. The argument is which Saint Severus we're dealing with Severus Snape. Not whether it's a Saint Severus, it's which one, because we got several. And so she knew enough about Eastern Christianity to come up with Saint Severus. So we embraced Harry Potter while rejecting a lot of others. And we didn't say Harry Potter was perfect, but we said this is something our family's going to do together. And this is worthwhile. I'll always remember, if my daughter ends up watching this sometime, she's going to crack up at me pulling all these old stories out. My daughter was totally into Peter Pan when she was a little girl. Dressed in green with a red feather and a cap 7 days a week, et cetera, et cetera. There's a great picture at our local Episcopal church when Madeline L'Engle ended up showing up at the church, on Feast of All Saints. And I recognized who that was in the congregation, ran home and got all of our Madeline L'Engle books and brought them back and had her sign all of them. But we have a great picture somewhere of Deborah as Tinkerbell and Sarah as Peter Pan with their arms around Madeline L'Engle. Okay, great story for the family. But my daughter wanted to read the original Peter Pan. That one. Not Disney, that one. And it became the great archetype for why you wanted to read the book before you saw the movie. She could probably quote you the entire opening 2 pages of Peter Pan. But we read all of Peter Pan when she was 3 years old. And it set the pattern from then on out. And my children heard me read the entire Lord of the Rings. I think we went all the way through it 4 times before Sarah went off to college. It was a ritual, but it was a ritual that was teaching something. Embrace what you can And if you have a reason for rejecting something, I'm not saying in-depth discussions of Taylor Swift's private life with a 10-year-old or something, but I'm not sure we want Taylor Swift defining what romance means in our culture. And Alison Krauss isn't perfect, but Alison Krauss's view of marriage and romance and a lot of other things is more complex. And when she's ready for Alison Krauss, I guarantee you Alison Krauss is going to last longer than Taylor Swift. My prediction. If I'm wrong, pick an exit in Johnson City and name it after it. Other questions? That was a long answer. Oh yeah, Father was waiting.
I just wanted to tack on because a lot of what you're saying, Terry, and a lot of what you said in the first session too regarding media, television, movies, is critical analysis.
Yes.
So we're wanting to teach our children to be critical thinkers about what they're encountering and what they're consuming. Because so much of that entertainment is it's playing into our passions. It is trying to make us passive. We just flop down in front of the couch, flop down in front of our smartphone, and just let things wash us.
Soak it in.
But with a lot of the stuff that our kids may be interested in, again, movies, television, and music, I would say there's a slim percentage that we could just unequivocally say, yeah, that's great, go for it. There's a slim percentage that we can say, absolutely not, never. There's a vast majority that we can say, well, let's talk about it. This album that you're listening to, or this movie that you want to see, let's listen to it together, let's watch it together, let's talk about it. What do you think about it? With this verse, these lyrics, what do you think that means, and so on. There's a lot of that where they can be experiencing it, but not bought into it, and be the one maintaining control over it. Because I'm deciding what this means for me and how I'm engaging, and so on. I think that's a huge, huge element. And that is furthermore teaching them the extremely valuable skill of being critical thinkers and evaluators in everything that they encounter in their life as well. And all types of news and politics and so on.
And teaching them what's great often sinks in better than the fact that you rejected something else is unworthy. Now, you say, but Terry, don't you ever just have fun? Yeah, there are movies they watch that are just a lot of fun. And we think they're hilarious, and we enjoy them. And we quote them right, along with the classics. But if the children hear you saying why certain things are important to you, and why you think certain things are, like, trust me, girl, nobody's going to be talking about that movie in 3 years. That is just a commercial nothing burger. Look at this one. And we would have parties and show these great movies.
And we'd have parties, and in our family, you have to listen to the movie so we can hear all the dialogue.
Yep.
Because that's important. And kids 25 years ago, they had trouble listening to a movie and not talking and not doing something else, instead of paying attention to the movie. So we were the weird people. No, we're going to pay attention to the movie, and then we're going to talk about it, and then we can laugh.
We're going to break for snacks here in a while. We'll talk, when we get to this point.
So, anyway.
Another funny movie, no great theological significance to this. A great Cold War film was called The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming. Sarah had a friend in high school who was a multicultural student who had come from Russia. So we invited him to the party for Russians Are Coming or Russians Are Coming, and he sat and translated all the stuff the Russians were saying. And then every once he'd go, oh, can't translate that one. Yeah, not safe for the party, but, and like, oh my gosh, that American guy thinks he's speaking Russian, but this is just not good enough. Well, it turned like into a dialogue with the film with this Russian kid, and he had the time of his life getting to be the weird Russian kid who translated all the Russian stuff in the movie. And the other kids came away with first of all, an appreciation for what it was like to live in a world where World War III was a reality that could show up. That led to some interesting conversations. Even though it's a funny movie, whatever. But We knew the film was worthy. We knew this Russian kid would have a blast. We threw a big party, and everybody had a great time. Father.
I just want to quickly tack on the approach, the parental approach to like completely blacklisting all types of certain media. You can only ever listen to Orthodox chant on in your room, that kind of thing. That fundamentalist approach does not work, because that is only teaching the kids to have a knee-jerk reaction rather than a deep critical analysis. Right? That is teaching them to embrace fear and ignorance, right? Which they won't ever embrace. They'll reject what we're teaching them rather than embracing that. So it is worth it for us to ourselves be very discerning, of course, in when and what age, and are they mature enough to watch this particular movie or whatever. But when they are, the question is not are they old enough for it, but are they old enough to think about it, to really evaluate it. So we can do that together.
And we read, Sarah, some novels with a lot of very strong content. Stephen Lawhead, a Christian who writes in the world of Celtic fiction and fantasy. There's some really dark stuff in Stephen Lawhead novels. And we waited until she was ready for them, and we read them. And one of them, Sarah said, I'll have nightmares about that part for a long time. But it also played a role in the Christian vision of the novel. And then meanwhile, a jazz composer named Jeff Johnson, who I had done an interview with him, had come along with an interesting idea. Nobody's made movies out of these Stephen Lawhead novels yet, but I'm going to go ahead and write the soundtracks. So he put out a series of 3 incredible albums that were the soundtracks that you listen to while reading the book. And that only made it more cool. And the fact that the soundtracks are wonderful. They're great stuff. Working with one of probably the greatest Celtic flute player in the world, who was also a Christian. Which meant you were getting to say, here are 2 tremendous Christian artists doing the soundtrack for these wild novels. And some of Lawhead's novels are about to hit the Daily Wire as extended form films. The Arthur trilogies, his retelling of the Arthur legends, are about to be on as film on the Daily Wire. It'll be interesting to see if the quality's good. But my daughter can tell you about all of the prequels to that. But you're trying, once again, you don't want to be the Orthodox Grinch. And it may take a lot of effort on your part to read up on whatever the next Harry Potter is. Or what's the name of the books, the atheist writer, Pullman?
Yeah.
Pullman. The books he wrote deliberately as a take to knock C.S. Lewis out of the elementary schools and middle schools of England. Well, we had a long discussion of that, but I read the first one, and first of all I thought, this is also not a really good novel. I don't think this thing is going to last. I'm not worried about whether 10 years from now no one's going to know what Narnia is because of this book. But I just told my daughter, I said, I know you got some friends reading it and whatever. I just don't think it's that good. And let's talk about why. I think she read a little bit of it and she went, this is boring. This is preachy, boring weirdness. And went right back to reading Jane Austen and books about horses and White Fang and the thousands of books she read, as a kid. Doesn't hurt when your mom is a librarian who knows children's lit inside out as well. Yes, sir.
So, hearing about all the books that your kids read when they were growing up and all the books that you read as a family, like paint a picture. What did an average weekday or weekend night look like in your family?
We only had 2 kids and not 5 or 6. So.
Okay, so well, reading time was before bed. Reading time was a part of what we called the flight pattern. The flight pattern at the end of the day. The bath and this, and then you end up in bed at a certain time. And reading was a part of that. And bless her heart, she kept coming to reading all the way into high school. She kept laying across the foot of the bed, and we kept reading. I will tell you this, and I'm putting all this right onto this video, which kind of embarrassed me who might see this. But Sarah tells this very interesting story about the first time she went to visit the family of this young man who would become her fiance and then her husband. Well, she saw something during that trip that the first time Deborah and I went up to meet the Wagners in New Hampshire, at one point she said, "Dad, come here, I want to show you something." And we went around, we went into Jeremy's father's study. And there was a wall of books. And it was all of the children's series and all of the books. And Sarah said, like 75% of what we read when I was a child is on this wall. And I thought to myself, the phrase that hit my mind was C.S. Lewis and Chesterton both use the image, the baptism of their imagination. To some degree, Jeremy had grown up listening to the same stories and the same books and learning, this is why we're reading this book, and this book's worth reading, and it's up here on the shelves, and then the next kid and the next kid. I don't think it was just a coincidence that Sarah and Jeremy had a lot to talk about when they started dating. And the fact that Jeremy was obsessed with Orthodoxy. And St. Brendan, of all people, before I ever even met him, the first time I ever met Jeremy, I went to his dorm room and there was a shelf of books about St. Brendan. And I looked up there and looked at my daughter and she went, "Yeah, Dad." Like, there they are.
Church fathers, his dad had the church fathers in his office.
Yeah.
Even though he wasn't.
But
You write a note to her asking her on a date in Elvish?
Yes.
the first time that Jeremy asked Sarah out for real, he wrote her a letter in Elvish.
Because he knew she had
And stuck it under the door. And so she had to get out the appendices in the back of Lord of the Rings to figure out what this letter was. So then at Holy Cross, the end of that story, was at the wedding, which I'll say was one of the great do-it-yourself weddings of all time. We had a parishioner who, professional, she said, "I'll make their cake for them." And we said, "Okay, we've got a weird dream." And with Jeremy's help, we wrote out, "He's laid upon their heads crowns of precious stones." So it's like the opening lines of the ceremony in Elvish, scrolled around the wedding cake. And Sarah came in for the reception and saw that and just...
She did not know.
Our friend Rod Dreher called it the greatest act of Tolkien nerddom I've ever seen. Or words to that effect. His note about the cake is still online somewhere if you want me to find you a picture of the cake. But the reading and the books and nighttime storytelling to some degree ended up on her wedding cake.
And see, now she has 5 kids, so they have to split it up between the little ones and the older ones. Of
Right.
What they're reading, because a 3-year-old doesn't want to read the same thing that a 12-year-old is reading. So, yeah.
Yeah, at night, I just wanted in bed.
Well,
I just wanted to.
and what they have found, though, is that very set flight patterns that end with you being asleep and in bed is in that part of what you're teaching them. And so, and also if you don't behave, we don't get to do reading tonight. That's another thing. But
We'll go through seasons. There's
Yeah.
seasons when we're...
well, we'll have ongoing discussions like that. And by the way, Father and I were talking about this briefly just the other day. The future of the parish library and the future of books and the future of whether or not this parish forms a relationship with Eighth Day Books, and book clubs and children's reading groups and whatever. That's a worthy thing for a parish to wrestle with. It doesn't mean there's any one set answer to it. But reading itself is almost an act of rebellion against the culture. But they also have found girls read way more than boys, and then it all stops the minute the girl culture kicks in at about 12 or 13. and when they feel they've got to dress a certain way and act a certain way, and girls stop reading. And if they don't, they're one of those girls, who then goes on and becomes weird. My big sister had a saying that grew out of something related to this, and that was, in elementary school in Johnson City, one of my daughter's best friends ran off and became a mall girl, basically, like in 5th or 6th grade. Cut Sarah off, just no more interested. And yes, the Spice Girls were a part of that. I remember that. She turned into a Spice Girl fan and stopped reading and went with her friends to the mall. And if there were smartphones then, she would have had one, okay? My daughter was really hurt. And my big sister, who's 8 years older than me, came up with a saying which I thought was really intriguing. She said, by the time, I think I get this precise, she said, by the time your child is 12, the issue is whether they have some great love in their life, in addition to the church, but some other great love, music, books, marching band, playing the guitar, whatever it is, some other great love they will refuse to give up in order to follow the crowd. And I think about that all the time. I really believe that's true. And that's something that the child will choose. You can offer things, but you don't know what it'll be. I never would have predicted my daughter would be marching band, would be one of the biggest.
I mean, the other saying that you told her a lot, and I can't remember if it was your sister Dina or somebody else that told her this, look around at your
Yes.
friends and the girls that are around and who is happy. Who is happy? Those are the ones you want to go to. You don't want to go to the ones that
Yep.
are always unhappy.
Look around the cafeteria or after school care or whatever. Look around you and try to figure out who is actually happy. Not who's pretending, not who's shouting and screaming and whatever. And I remember telling her at the time, I said, yeah, another word from that in a Christian world would be content and thankful. So these are all really big issues. And this is the sort of thing that I think a parish reading day, an annual reading day with parents sharing their reading lists and stuff like that. And you've got a librarian that's moved into the church. But these are all worthwhile because God is the God of all creation, and all of creation is both glorious and fallen, and we got to deal with the fallen, and one of the ways is we embrace the glorious, and we do our best. Other questions? We're early. I'm tired. My voice is going. Let's call it an end there, and this conversation will continue and continue and continue, I hope. And we are very happy to be here. I left out an interesting little twist in my story earlier, and I'll put it here. That group of people that formed a church in Johnson City, eventually the priest of that church would be Father Stephen Matthews. And this Greek church would ask, why can't he be our priest? And a miracle occurred in American Orthodoxy, and it's one that's going to need to occur in a lot of other places in the United States. And so Deborah and I are happy to be back. My daughter, I'm quoting my daughter to death today. Sorry, Sarah.
When she and her family come on Christmas, that'll be Nell's opportunity to say, I've heard so much about it.
When we told our daughter we were going to do this, that we were coming back to the Tri-Cities and back here, and of course the total weirdness that Father Gregory and Frederica that he's the priest here and that they're here, from the years we spent together in Baltimore. I told Father Stephen that he was going to love the Tri-Cities, and I did, don't worry, the first time we ever talked about this, my daughter says, this is the strangest full circle story possible. And I went, yes, girl, it is. And here we are, and we're glad to be here. Thank you so much for your time, and may these conversations continue.